Hey, before we dive in, I want you to think about how you use AI every single day. Search, email drafts, directions. Totally normal, right? Most of us picture AI like a super smart calculator. You ask, it answers, and you decide what to do with the result. Clean and simple. That's the mental model almost everyone shares. Human asks, AI helps, human decides. And for years, that framing felt completely accurate. The U.S. Department of Defense actually wrote this into official policy. DoD personnel must exercise appropriate levels of judgment and care at all times. Their responsible AI framework has 5 core principles: responsible, equitable, traceable, reliable, and governable. Sounds solid, right? Sounds reassuring. The official line is clear. AI supports warfighters. It doesn't replace their judgment. Humans make the calls. Machines are there to assist. Now here's what I want you to sit with. What if that's still technically true, but not practically true anymore? What if the line between AI assists and AI decides first is getting blurrier every single day? And we're barely noticing it. Because there's one story from early 2026 that forced a lot of people to stop and ask exactly that uncomfortable question. Are you ready? Before we go further, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust AI to help you make decisions? Think about that. January 2026. Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan president the U.S. had been pursuing for years on drug trafficking charges, was captured. The operation was fast, precise, and genuinely audacious. Forces moved in, seized Maduro, and flew him directly to New York to face federal charges. The world was stunned. But the bigger shock came a few weeks later, in February, buried in a Wall Street Journal report. The WSJ reported that Anthropic's AI model, Claude, had been used in the operation. Reuters picked it up and ran the story the same day. Now Reuters was careful. They cited the WSJ report but added they could not independently verify it. That nuance matters. We have to be honest about it. Okay, quick check. Did you already hear about this story? Because I think a lot of people saw the headline and moved on too fast. But here's what we absolutely know. Because Anthropic said it themselves in their official public announcement, not in a leaked memo. In July 2025, Anthropic signed a $200 million contract with the Pentagon's Chief Digital and AI Office. A 2-year prototype agreement. Anthropic confirmed Claude was being used for intelligence analysis, operational planning, handling classified material, and cyber operations across the U.S. military. Claude was also the first AI model ever approved to operate on classified military networks. That's their own press release, not speculation. The Palantir connection matters too. Claude runs inside Palantir's Maven smart system, the Pentagon's primary AI platform for battlefield data and targeting. So even if we can't confirm Claude planned the Maduro raid specifically, we know Claude was deeply embedded in the military systems that ran it. Okay, here's where this story gets genuinely interesting. And honestly, this is the part that most media coverage completely missed. Everyone kept asking, did AI make the decision? That's the dramatic framing, but that's not actually the scary question here. Think about how decisions actually get made. In any organization, any government, any war room, where does it start? It starts with information. Someone has to gather the data, sort it, analyze it, build a picture, identify options, rank them, and present the top choice. That's enormous power. Real talk. At your job, who usually has more influence? The person who writes the first draft or the person who signs the final approval? Whoever writes the first draft holds enormous power, even if they never get a formal vote. That's just how organizations work. Always has been. Now ask yourself, in a system like Maven, who is doing those early information gathering and option building steps today? Increasingly, the answer is AI. Reuters reported in March 2026 that Maven can analyze massive amounts of data from satellites, drones, radars, sensors, and intelligence reports simultaneously. Maven then automatically identifies potential threats and targets. Pentagon official Cameron Stanley demonstrated this live. Tasks that once took hours now take seconds. And now here's the quote that stopped me cold. Deputy Secretary of Defense Steve Feinberg in an official March 2026 memo to all Pentagon leaders. He wrote, and I'm quoting directly here, "It is imperative to establish AI-enabled decision-making as the cornerstone of our strategy. Cornerstone, not one tool among many. Not a helpful assistant. The cornerstone. That's a structural word, the thing everything else is built around. So let me ask you directly. If AI identifies the targets, ranks the options, and builds the operational picture, what exactly is the human doing? The human presses approve. The human gets the last click. But is having the last click the same as actually being in control of the decision? Imagine you're handed two options. Option A was flagged as urgent and high probability by the AI. Option B looks riskier. You pick A. Did you really decide? There's a huge difference between deciding and confirming. And we are starting to live in a world where that line is quietly disappearing. Now, here's what I think is genuinely the most interesting part, and honestly, the most uncomfortable. Why do humans go along with AI recommendations? The easy answer is because AI is smart. But that's not really it. The real answer has three parts, and each one is kind of unsettling. Part 1. Speed. Maven can do in seconds what used to take hours. The Pentagon official said so himself at a live public demonstration. When a system delivers answers that fast, you don't have time to audit every output. You're no longer a reviewer. You become an approver. Think about GPS. You trust it. Not because you verified every single turn yourself, but because you're driving at 65 mph and there's no time. Now scale that up. Wartime. Hundreds of data feeds, thousands of data points per minute. Be honest, who actually has time to audit that? Part 2. Automation bias. This is a real, well-documented psychological phenomenon. It shows up in military research and in everyday life consistently. Rand's research on human-machine integration found something striking. The more experience you have with AI, the more likely you are to defer to it. Not less, more. The people who know these systems best are often the ones most likely to follow AI recommendations without questioning them. There's a name for this. Once you understand how AI processes information, you start trusting its conclusions even when the specific output might be wrong. Medical studies show the same exact pattern. Doctors using AI diagnostic tools approve AI recommendations at higher rates than their own initial clinical instincts. And Pentagon IT contractors literally described Claude as the best, better than xAI's Grok, better than alternatives. Strong track record, stronger bias. Has an AI, your phone, Siri, a work tool, ever made a recommendation you just went with without really questioning? Of course you have. We all have. Part 3 on it, and this one moves slowly but might be the most powerful of all. Organizational lock-in. AI quietly reshapes how entire institutions function. When Secretary Hegseth ordered Claude removed from Pentagon systems in March 2026, here's what actually happened. Almost nothing. Not from defiance. Contractors reported that recertifying systems built on Anthropic's products for classified military use could take 12 to 18 months. A year, minimum. The Secretary of Defense issued an order. The realistic compliance timeline was longer than a year. That's not resistance, that's dependency. There's a difference. Tasks Claude used to handle, like querying massive data sets, were suddenly being done manually in Microsoft Excel. That's a genuine operational regression. One Pentagon IT contractor said directly, "Career IT people at DoD hate this move because they had finally gotten operators comfortable using AI." And some staff were slow-rolling the phase-out, still using Claude to build new workflows, betting the ban would be reversed before the 6-month deadline. Think about that for a second. A military order was issued, people just waited it out. What does that tell you about who was really running things? The organization had restructured itself around Claude's rhythm and capabilities. When an AI tool is that embedded, it's not a tool anymore. It's infrastructure. Okay, I want to be fair here, because there's a real counter-argument, and it deserves honest airtime. The safeguards that exist are genuinely meaningful. The DoD Responsible AI Doctrine isn't just a press release. It's a detailed framework with 6 foundational tenets and dozens of specific implementation requirements. The traceable principle requires that all personnel understand the technology, development process, and operational methods of every AI system they interact with. The governable principle requires AI systems to detect unintended consequences and be capable of being disengaged or fully deactivated if they behave unexpectedly. Palantir stated clearly, humans remain responsible for selecting and approving targets. Their software does not make lethal decisions. That's their official position. Anthropic drew the same line. Operational decision-making is the military's role, not a private company's. That boundary was stated explicitly and publicly, and the United Nations has been paying attention. UN expert panels have flagged AI weapons targeting, without sufficient human oversight, as raising serious ethical and legal risks. There are real, thoughtful people inside the DoD wrestling with automation bias, over-reliance, and what happens when AI gets it wrong in a conflict zone. The RAND report on human-machine integration runs hundreds of pages. It's not naive. It grapples seriously with exactly these failure modes and edge cases. So the question isn't whether guardrails exist, they genuinely do. The real question is whether institutional safeguards keep pace with the speed of AI integration. Here's what I want you to take with you now. Everything we've discussed, Maven, Claude, the Maduro raid, that's the extreme high-stakes version. But the underlying structure, AI drafts first, human approves second, that's already happening in your daily life. Probably multiple times today. When a hiring algorithm screens resumes before any human sees them, who actually decided which candidates were worth a second look? Think about it. When a bank's AI scores your loan application, who decided whether you're creditworthy? A human signs off, but were the options actually theirs to choose? Here's a real one. When did you last push back on something an AI suggested? Your GPS, your Spotify, your work tool? When did you actually override it? Hospital triage systems now use AI to flag which patients need urgent attention. The AI writes the first draft of who gets a doctor's eyes first. Your newsfeed is entirely AI ranked. Your music, your recommendations. Every single one of those is an AI writing the first draft of your reality. The military version is just the highest stakes, most visible form of a structure that's quietly becoming the default architecture of every major institution. And the unsettling part is we never really voted on any of this. Nobody announced the transition. It just happened. Gradually, then suddenly. The shift from AI helps me decide to AI determines what I get to decide between. That transition is already well underway. In your pocket right now, we started today thinking about AI as a tool, a calculator with attitude, something you use when you need it and put away when you're done. But what this story reveals, from the Pentagon to Palantir, from the Maduro raid to your hiring algorithm, is that something fundamentally different is happening. AI isn't just answering our questions anymore. It's structuring which questions we get to ask, which options feel natural, which paths seem obvious. The Maduro story still can't be fully confirmed. We don't know exactly what Claude did, or didn't do, in that operation in January 2026, but we know this much. Claude was deeply embedded in the systems that ran it, and organizations that tried to remove it found they couldn't do so easily. That's not a warning about the future. That's a description of the present, and it applies to every institution, military or civilian, that has adopted AI at scale. So here's the question I'll leave you with. We still call ourselves the decision makers. But who's been writing the first draft of our decisions? That's a wrap for today. If this made you think differently about AI, even just a little bit, that's exactly why we made it. See you next time.